So in this last module of this part of the course, we are going to talk about sources of secondary data. Secondary data can be divided into internal and external data sources. Internal data is information that's internal to the company. External data is provided by external suppliers or agencies. So these could include both data that's in the public domain and data that are provided by commercial suppliers, which is often called syndicated data sources or custom designed research. All right. So let's start by looking at internal data. So the great advantage of internal data sources is that they are free and easily accessible and may often be relevant if the company has conducted research in the past having to do with the specific topic or product that they're thinking about right now. Whether it's qualitative research or a survey or some sort of experiment, that information might very well be relevant in designing the current research study. So it's free, it's accessible, it may be relevant. On the other hand, not every company has a bank of data studies or findings from the past. So this may not exist, and if it does exist, it may have very limited scope, may be relevant to a different aspect or a different product of the companies. So if it exists, it's a great starting point. But in many cases, you'll have to go to external data sources. And the starting point for that should be the public data sources, because they're typically free and in the public domain. This would include, whatever you might find on the internet. You might find it in library databases, and there's many of those, and so on. Government agencies, government departments provide statistics or compile statistics on a regular basis. So all of this could be useful. But the big questions are the following. First of all, is the data relevant? Because in many cases, the data may be at best only marginally relevant to the particular question that you're looking to answer. So if you're looking to figure out how people will respond to a new product, for example, you're not going to find much out there that will be relevant to your question. Unless you find a case study of a similar product, it's highly unlikely that you will actually be able to use any of the information in the public domain. The second issue that you should think about if you're looking at information in the public domain is whether it's credible. That is, does the agency or organization that collected the data have credibility? Do they have an agenda that might be influencing or biasing the data that they're presenting? For example, trade associations often provide data on industries that they represent. However, that data can be skewed to present the industry in a favorable light for various reasons, for potential new entrants, for government regulators, and so on. So you have to worry about the agenda of these external agencies that might provide data that is free. And you also have to wonder about the credibility of these external agencies in terms of their ability to collect the data. Do they have the resources to collect the data? Do they have the expertise to collect the data in a way that makes it accurate? And do they have the ability to analyze that information? So all of these issues become very problematic, or at least sources of concern, when you're dealing with information in the public domain. Probably the most unbiased source of data, at least in the US, would be government sources of information. So at least that should be a good starting point for any research project. In fact, pretty much for any type of research, secondary data should be a good starting point, because it's generally free, generally accessible, and may be relevant. So instead of thinking about doing primary research, you might want to start by looking at whatever's out there in the public domain or in internal databases. The last category I want to talk about are commercial suppliers of market research data. And these include large agencies that provide data to many clients with similar needs. So for example, Nielsen will collect data from a variety of sources. They collect data on retail sales, they collect data on TV viewing, and so on. And these data are then sold to companies who require the data, who have pretty much similar data needs. So this is syndicated data. That is, it's data that's collected by one organization and sold to multiple clients. Then there's the other category, which is custom data or custom research, which refers to research that is designed specifically to address your problem. And this is probably the most expensive type of research you can do. But it's also the most relevant in many cases. So the general advantage of commercial suppliers, whether it's syndicated or custom data, is that they are usually quite relevant to the problem at hand. They usually are credible. They have the ability and expertise to collect the data in an unbiased manner and in an accurate manner and to analyze it appropriately. They often provide quantitative data, which is very useful and important as a conclusive data source for formulating strategy. On the other hand, the big downside of all these commercial sources is that they're extremely expensive. So typically we tend to start with secondary data and only go to syndicated or custom data if we are unable to find the kind of information we're looking for in the public domain or in internal databases. So let's take a closer look at secondary data sources, starting with internal data. Internal data is information that the organization has in its internal records. This could include transaction data on sales to its customers or customer characteristics, such as that you'd get from product registration and customer surveys. You would get data on marketing activity, including sales visits to customers, advertising and media expenditures, prices, consumer and trade promotion expenditures, product and packaging, trade margins, etc. All this information will be available over time, assuming the company has been in business for some time. A lot can be learned from these internal data. For example, one could break down the sales data in various ways to examine how sales differ for different customer groups or different geographical regions, and how these sales are changing over time. One could look at the profitability of different customer groups or types and identify the most profitable and the least profitable customers for the company to serve. One can also look at the correlation between sales, which is an outcome or performance variable, and marketing activity, which is an input or expense incurred by the company. So you can get initial evidence of the impact of marketing activity on sales, and this can be a useful starting point for further research using primary data. The other type of information that you can look at is information in the external or public domain. So this includes government, media, databases, etc., as well as syndicated and custom research that I mentioned earlier.
Many US-based companies operate in overseas markets and need information about market conditions and consumers in those countries. This information may be needed for a variety of reasons. For example, to come up with a short list of countries that need further investigation, or to estimate demand potential in certain markets, or to understand changes in the economic or marketing environment in those countries. However, secondary sources in international markets pose some unique challenges compared to those in the US. Data accuracy is sometimes an issue because multiple sources may use different definitions and report different values for the same metric, such as gross national product or per capita income. Accuracy may also vary from country to country, as the more industrialized countries may use more sophisticated procedures and have more resources to collect data compared to developing countries. These are some of the sources that are commonly used in international market research. Some sources, such as the United Nations, World Bank, etc., focus on economic data, while others, such as the US Department of Commerce, provide industry-level data. Still others can be useful in getting background data on specific companies or sectors. The remaining slides in this module list sources of data in the public domain and syndicated research that are useful in marketing, and they are categorized by type of source and by topic. You can also download the PDF for this video to acquire this list.